Welcome to episode 105 of the Live with the Maverick podcast. The theme of today's discussion is Actuaries and Entrepreneurship Part 2. And we are very excited to have with us our guest, 𝗕𝗶𝘃𝗲 𝗪𝗶𝘁𝗵. Barry is Executive Director and Co-Founder at 𝗕𝗽𝗶𝘃𝗲 Limited. So welcome, Barry.
Tom, it's great to be here. Fantastic to be on your podcast, and I look forward to the conversation.
I certainly look forward to it as well, and we just love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I am a qualified actuary. I qualified in the early 1990s, and since I qualified, I've been on an entrepreneurial journey for the last 35 years or so, trying to build a phenomenal business, which I've been very fortunate to be part of Discovery here in South Africa. And we've spread our wings across the world, which is also very exciting for us. But I've always been, always been fascinated and sort of motivated by entrepreneurship and the link between entrepreneurship and, the actuarial profession. So yeah, that's the thing I've sort of concentrated my energies on, and my effort my whole life is building businesses, not necessarily only managing businesses.
That's excellent. And one of the reasons, other than just the fact that you've been successful over the years, that I want to have you on the podcast is through this brand, through Maverick Actuary, we're trying to encourage actuaries to take risk and to try different things and to, like you said, to create businesses that add a lot of value in the broader society. So that's honestly one of the reasons I'm the most excited to have you on the podcast and to talk about your entrepreneurial journey and to talk about some of the things that you've done with Discovery and its respective subsidiaries.
Yeah, I suppose when you study actuarial science, a lot of people think about managing risk. What's that's the whole thing about how to manage financial risk. And I think what it does is it kind of boxes you into not taking risk, right? It's like, if you're going to manage risk, well, therefore don't take any risk. But I think it's about, managing it in a smart way. How do you manage the risk? How do you create something? Because you're not going to get any return without taking some element of risk. Whether you start an organization or you're working within an organization, at some point in time, you got to take risks. So I just think like the actuarial mindset is, well, if I'm managing risk, don't take it, And I think actuaries need to come past that and move past that to trying to actually, start taking a little bit of risk.
That's a great point. And I think, I've had a very similar observations. And I think when I think of risk and what actuaries do, I think there's a couple of sides. There's a downside of risk, which to your point, I think actuaries spend a lot of time managing, but then there's that upside. I talk about harnessing the upside of risk, and depending on where you sit in the company or the type of actuary you are, I think actuaries who work in capital modeling and ERM, I think they probably are the ones who get a bit closer. Or of course, if they're on the financial track and they're working on the investment side, I think those actuaries get a bit more exposure to the upside. But to your point, a lot of actuaries tend to focus more on managing downside. So I think that's been my observation as to why you may not see as many actuaries going into entrepreneurship and taking risk.
Yeah. Although, it's kind of different in South Africa because I think if you're not a self-starter, you don't care for yourself, nothing's going to happen for you. It's very difficult to create a career, to be successful in this market without taking some element of risk. So you tend to find, South African actuaries are slightly more entrepreneurial, slightly more involved in marketing and outgoing, and it tends to attract a slightly different individual, person with, dare I say it, a bit more outgoing personality and more of an extrovert, etc. So I tend to think South African actuaries are a different kind of breed, willing to start new businesses and look at opportunities. I'm not painting a picture of the rest of the world about actuaries and the rest of the world. I'm just saying, South African actuaries tend to have been a little bit more, forward looking and willing to try different things.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, not to throw my own geography under the bus, but in North America, like I've certainly since learned about South Africa when I started speaking to people and actuaries across the world. And to your point, I think in the US, the actuaries tend to be a bit more classical, a bit more risk averse. And like you said, South Africa is certainly an area where there's a lot more appetite for actuaries to take risk. And I've been very fortunate to have other actuaries, on the podcast. We just had Ron Richman on just a couple of episodes ago, and we've had a few others as well. So I've been just very fortunate to get that perspective.
Right.
But as we think of entrepreneurship, as before we even get into the conversation on that, you did start your career as an actuary in product development, which I think is a very exciting area. So how would you describe your role? I think you had at least one actuarial role at the beginning of your career. How would you describe that role?
Yeah. So I got a bursary from a life insurance company called 𝗕𝗶𝗃𝗲, which was started by a famous entrepreneur in South Africa, Donald Gordon. And my very first job in that organization was in a typical actuarial role. And I was there for a couple of months, and I always wanted to do something a little bit more interesting, a bit more exciting. And a friend of mine was leaving product development, sort of a mentor of mine, a man by the name of Colin Smith. And he said to me, listen, I'm leaving this area, product development. Why don't you go into this area in product development at 𝗕𝗶𝗃𝗲? And I grabbed the opportunity with both hands, because in my mind, that's kind of the center of the organization where things are kind of happening. New ideas are getting developed, interesting discussions about the link between the marketplace and the company, how to marry that link, and how to get that link together, how to develop products for the market, how to get an understanding from the market what they require. So when Colin was leaving, and the reason why he left South Africa is a very typical reason why people left in those days, because there was conscription to the army, and he didn't want to go into the army in South Africa, so he left South Africa and went back to the UK. Went to the UK actually. So I was very fortunate to get an opportunity to go into product development from a typical actuarial role. And I really enjoyed it, because, for me, it was kind of at the heart, as I said, at the heart of the organization, thinking of new products, how it met in the marketplace, what do distributors think of the product. And, once you develop the product, it wasn't only about, well, it's developed, it's out in the marketplace. We used to get feedback continuously from agents and brokers about, listen, this is right with the product, this is wrong with the product, this is what, to change it and tweak it. And I really enjoyed that interaction as well, just because, when you do a lot of product development, it's kind of an inward focused process. A lot of work is done internally within the organization. And then you launch it out to the marketplace, and you get a lot of feedback. But a lot of people then just leave the product as is. We had the view that once you got it out there, take that feedback immediately and change and tweak the product. If things aren't working, something's not working, the product's not really meeting the needs of the marketplace, is to take that feedback to heart and make a few changes and tweak the product, and get it out there again and relaunch it. And I love that whole interaction, the development of it, the reading about products in other marketplaces, the pricing of it, even creating the systems to run that product. That was also an interesting part for me, is actually the new development of it, actually creating something in the computing systems that can manage this new product. So every aspect about it, the marketing of it, how do you present the product to the market, the branding and the product positioning. And so all those aspects was part of what we did. It was a very, very small team. So whilst there was obviously pricing and benefit design, we were involved in the whole element of it, marketing, distribution, the actual launch of the product. And at a pretty young age, we were sort of thrust into this area in an organization with, quite a bit of responsibility at a pretty young age. So I really, really enjoyed it. Let me just mention to you, I had a person I was working for. His name was 𝗕𝗽𝗶𝘆 was my boss, and actually my co-founder Adrian Gore's boss at that point in time. And he sat us down one day. I remember at a lunch at a steakhouse near where we were working. He said to us, listen, ideas shouldn't filter down an organization, then you develop those ideas. You should come out. We give you permission effectively to come up with your own ideas. Read up about what's going on around the world and come up with your own ideas. And he kind of gave us permission to sort of really do research and development, come up with new concepts and launch it into the marketplace. And that single meeting kind of changed my life, because I felt, listen, I wasn't like subject to the weight of the organization. We could come up with our own ideas. And we actually took that opportunity. We did develop a product that was very successful. We launched it here in South Africa and really sort of created our career. But the sort of kernel, the start of that idea was from our sort of boss at that time, giving us permission to be more creative and take responsibility.
That's great to hear that you had the flexibility and the latitude to come up with your own ideas. I know certainly depending on the organization, I can only speak for the US, especially with larger organizations that have been around for 100+ years. They have a way of that established way of doing things, and oftentimes they're successful, and while there's always room for innovation, sometimes you can have several layers of red tape that can hold you back in terms of being able to actually implement those ideas. And it sounded like you not only had that latitude, but you had is a very symbiotic fit with entrepreneurship. You understood the product, you understood what the market wanted, you understood the pricing of it, being able to test and iterate, and and going through the whole product cycle. Would that be a fair assessment?
Absolutely. The whole thing from idea initiation all the way to launching into product, and also to, as I said, managing the product whilst it's in the marketplace, getting feedback from the markets and it sort of iterating the product. And that sort of gave Adrian and myself a lot of confidence to say, listen, if we could do it for another organization, ultimately we could do it for ourselves, because that sort of initiates the organization. If you got great product, and I would say today, even today, 30, 40 years later that we're running our own organization, we're really a product-led company. And that's sort of from our early days of doing product development for another organization. It's really instilled in us the importance of having an excellent product that's value for money for the clients, and they're getting, they feel they enjoy the product, etc. So that sort of early sort of initiation into product development for us was sort of key for our career.
That's a great story. Now, you mentioned Adrian a couple of times, your business partner. So in 1992, you co-founded Discovery Limited with your business partner, Adrian Gore. And when I think of entrepreneurial stories, oftentimes when I speak to entrepreneurs, it's not just did they have an idea, but it could happen in many different ways. In some cases, people had an idea that the company either didn't want to implement, or perhaps they were implementing it and they weren't taking a particular angle, or they discovered a new angle. So when you think back to when you and Adrian started Discovery Limited, the early days, what was your motivation for becoming an entrepreneur and going out on your own? I definitely understand that you had that latitude to solve problems within your organization. So, I always ask that question because actuaries who have the credentials and have a fairly stable career, and in addition to that, you still had that latitude to innovate. So what gave you that conviction, and what was that catalyst for becoming an entrepreneur and starting this company with Adrian?
So a couple of things that sort of coalesced that time. First of all, we worked for a company, Liberty Life, that was founded by a very famous entrepreneur in South Africa, and he was still in the organization when we were there. So we looked up to him, and he was a motivating figure for us, an icon for us. And so I suppose we always wanted to follow in his footsteps and create a company of our own. And then we worked in product development. That sort of gave us that confidence to be able to do it on our own. Certainly the initial part of an organization is creating that product that you need for the marketplace. So that gave us confidence. And the third thing, we were studying with someone who was aware of a dormant life insurance license at another organization. And he told us that this company is looking for ideas on how to revive their license. So those kinds of three things just came together, you know, the sort of intrinsic motivation at Liberty, the confidence in our own abilities, even though at a pretty young age, our mid-20s, we had that kind of confidence because we'd been doing it for a couple of years. And then this opportunity arose of this organization here in Johannesburg. It was Rand Merchant Bank. They were looking to revive their license. So all those three things came together. And we went to go see Rand Merchant Bank and made a pitch to them about, you know, this is what they should be doing with their dormant life insurance company. It was a pretty small company, and they wanted to revive and start doing new business. So it was kind of also coming together. What they wanted to do is Rand Merchant Bank and ourselves as the entrepreneurs coming together to try and revive this company.
Okay, so when you started, so it sounded like you said, the opportunity on the life side. What was your vision for the company when you first started? Was it primarily related to that life piece and then you incrementally build it up? Or did you have a broader vision to include like several different products, lines of business at first? What was that thought process?
We always had a sort of building an iconic company in mind. From day one, we wanted to build a company that we could be proud of. It's bigger than any individual, that people would want to come being employed by that company. That was, our clients would want to, you know, we want to buy products and enjoy the products that we developed and offered to the, you know, to the marketplace. So for us, it was about creating a sort of an aspirational organization, a big organization that's aspirational, that's iconic, etc. That's always what we had top of mind. We never ever said to ourselves, this is going to be in life insurance or in health insurance, or we just wanted obviously in financial services, because that was our background and our, you know, and our studies, but we wanted it to be something that was an admired organization, and you know, that also made a difference in society. So that's the kind of feeling we wanted, something that was sort of iconic, ethical, you know, etc. And yeah, that's sort of the feeling that we had. And actually, Rand Merchant Bank also wanted that. They also wanted to create something that was special and not just take advantage of a short-term opportunity, but actually create something for the long term.
That's very refreshing to hear when you use the terms iconic, aspirational. When I think of companies in the US, for instance, if I think of companies outside of insurance, so including tech companies, like I think of a company like Apple, they're always pushing the boundaries of innovation. You do certainly have companies like that people acknowledge as having those very specific values and attributes. When I think of the financial services world, you know, honestly, there's not many companies that immediately come to mind, especially with insurance, where I can kind of use those kind of adjectives themselves. So it's refreshing to hear that from back then, you know, you had, you know, that very specific vision of it being, like you said, iconic, aspirational. You know, that's just very refreshing to hear. Now, in addition to that, you know, were there any areas from your experience when you were at Liberty Life, were there any areas of the market that you had seen that you thought were unaddressed, untapped, that you thought, okay, well, you know, this is an area as well that we could really go into and disrupt? Or was it more, like you said, just purely led by the values and ultimately you kind of found those opportunities?
No. So when it actually started out and Rand Merchant Bank wanted to revive this license, everyone was thinking about a life insurance company.
Okay.
And inside the logo of Rand Merchant Bank are keys. So we were going to call ourselves Key Life. And that was our original thinking, create this thing, Key Life. And the first sort of 5 or 6 months of the company's existence, we were just reviving the license because it was close to new business. But what happened was Rand Merchant Bank went and purchased, I mean, they're a merchant bank. They went and purchased another life insurance company in South Africa called Momentum Life.
Okay.
So they already then created this life insurance company. So we said we need to pivot out of life insurance into health insurance. So our very successful product that we had launched at Liberty was a health insurance stated benefit product. It was It was a fantastic. It sold a significant amount of new business, and did exceptionally well. And that's what we were known for. That product that we developed, that we came up with, our idea was a stated benefit health insurance policy. So the central idea that we wanted to do was going into health insurance, not for individuals, but for corporates. So that was the focus on corporates. And we always had the feeling of focusing not on supply, but on demand. So focusing on the client, being client-focused and demand-focused, demand-led. There's a very specific reason why in South Africa that's the case, and why that really created our success was focus on demand and not supply. Certainly initially, for the first sort of 15, 20 years of existence of our company, we purely focused on demand. So we pivoted out of life insurance into health insurance. That was what we had developed at Liberty. So we knew the market pretty well. We knew what would sell, but the focus was out of individuals more in towards the corporate health insurance market. And then the focus on, as I said, on demand. I can go into that in more detail if you'd like.
Sure, that's helpful. Before we get into, I have some very specific
Sure.
questions on the operational model for Discovery. But another observation I had based on our conversation is that your business started during the fall of a very significant period in South Africa's history, during the fall of apartheid. And that was a time of significant political change. Now, my understanding is that during the time, for instance, there might have been sanctions against the country, which would have impacted, for instance, relations with other countries. It might have impacted the investment environment, and I imagine that there are several other impacts as well. So how did you manage to navigate this turbulent period as an entrepreneur, as you're starting the company in a very consequential period in the country's history?
Exactly, Dominic. That for us was a kind of a key to our success. Whilst a lot of people were concerned and not investing, right? That people were contemplating their future in the country, whether they should be here or elsewhere, leave the country. We saw actually more opportunities. Whilst there was massive political change, we thought that if we made a mark then, we put in an effort then, it would pay off multiple times in the future if and when things came right. We were confident that things would come right and the country would become, successful, and the Rainbow Nation, etc. We had that belief, even though in 1992 when we started was a very, very tough time in South Africa. It was between the release of Nelson Mandela and the first democratic elections in 1994. It was a very volatile period in the country. But we had that belief. We thought, that as opposed to sort of running away from the problem, now's the time, now the opportunities are actually being created. And it turned out to be the exact right call because, the country has done well, relatively well. I mean, from that date, it's done exceptionally well. You think back to those days where it could have gone, it's done exceptionally well. And the market sort of opened up and, and went in our direction. And we were sort of the initiators of that. And, even if you look today, we're one of the largest organizations created since then, because we were so positive about the country and the future of the country. We invested, and we still invest today significantly in the country. So I think it was that positive attitude. And it's kind of, for me, it's a lot of the lessons for other countries that when you go through, political turmoil, I think it's actually the time to invest. It's the time to get involved in something, not always, de-risk. Is actually take a little bit more risk during that time, because that's when I think significant value is created.
That concept, or what happened, reminds me of Tony Robbins, the famous motivational speaker. I'm paraphrasing. One time he said that millionaires are made in times of crisis. And he documented, during not just the financial crisis, but during kind of post 9/11, lots of periods of crises where there are problems that entrepreneurs identified that needed to be solved.
Right.
So I think that's a really good reminder that, like you said, it's not only when things are, nice and calm. It's sometimes when the most turbulent periods is where the most opportunities are.
Right. I mean, you take in America right now, a change of government. I'm sure opportunities will be created. You've got to have that kind of mindset of looking for those opportunities now.
Yes, for sure. Couldn't agree more. And no, I'm excited to talk a bit more about Discovery Limited, the company that you co-founded with Adrian. So Discovery Limited, they're known for utilizing an innovative approach to insurance called the shared value insurance model. So how would you describe the shared value insurance model?
So as I was saying, in the early 90s, when we were going into health insurance and creating a health insurance company, the one thing that we noticed here, as opposed to the US or many other markets, is that there's an undersupply of doctors and hospitals. And because there's an undersupply of doctors and hospitals, it's very difficult to make a market out of doctors and hospitals, to go and offer them volume for a discount. I mean, typically in the US medical management, you go into doctors and hospitals and say, listen, I'm going to send you our volume as a health insurer. Give us a discount. We'll pass the discount on to consumers. That's effectively how it works, right? Yeah. Health insurance companies are a sort of a buying club in a way. They, the aggregators. Yeah. But it didn't work here, because you go into a doctor's offices here in Johannesburg and say, listen, I'll send you volume. Please give me a discount. He'll or she'll say to you, listen, my waiting rooms are full. I don't need extra patients. I've got the patients. So we couldn't make a market out of doctors and hospitals, etc. So we focused on demand. Rather keep the individual out the hospital, keep them out of the healthcare system. It's a lot cheaper, the person not going for the procedure, than getting a discount in the procedure. So our whole thing from the very start of our organization was, we're going to focus on the client, on the consumer, keep them healthy and keep them out of the healthcare system. So it's a very much a demand-led model. And so we came up with a few innovations that it sort of made our mark and differentiated us and created this idea of shared value insurance. The first one was a medical savings account. So most health insurance systems work exceptionally well from first dollar coverage, but then they hit limits. So we turned it on its head to say, listen, we'd rather offer you excellent coverage when you need it, typical insurance. So higher deductible. Once you hit the deductible, you have excellent insurance with pretty much no limit. But at the bottom, day-to-day medical expenses that are more controllable by the individual, put that money into a medical savings account. So we were this actually idea came out of the US. Two individuals, John Goodman and John Musgrave, wrote a book called Patient Power many years back. And they wrote about a medical savings account. We actually took that concept and implemented it here in SA and really turned the market on and said, by saying, listen, there's no longer first rand or first dollar coverage. There's a deductible with insurance above it, and have a savings account for controllable medical expenses. Effectively putting the client in control of their own day-to-day medical expenses. So that was our first innovation. The second innovation was, well, once you're doing that, you got to encourage the person to lead a preventative life, and as opposed to curative medical expenses, which are very, very expensive. How do you encourage a person to exercise and eat healthily and go for the annual screenings and not smoke and less drinking, etc.? So we came up with this concept of putting it into a system of like a preventative system, right? Of making sure that the person focused on preventative ideas and that type of thing. So encouraging them to exercise, eating healthily, etc. And so we created a program called Vitality. And the whole thing around Vitality was actually to incentivize healthier living. So if we incentivize them, right, to exercise, go for your daily run or whatever, or your walk 5,000 steps a day, whatever it takes, get people active and get them eating healthy and stopping to smoke, etc., and actually understand their health conditions by going for an annual screen. So we put this program together called Vitality, and the whole thing about it was we wanted to do it via incentives and rewards. So if you did exercise, you got some incentives, some rewards to do it. And then you create this virtuous cycle, because if the person, the individual, the client says, listen, I'm happy to go and do the exercise and follow the program, I'm going to get the rewards. It's good for me. definitely, because me as a client, as an individual, I'm doing something that's good for my lifestyle, etc., my longevity, my health span. But it turns out it's good for the insurance company as well, damn good, because it reduces claims, it has positive selection, it has positive on withdrawal, on lapsation. It has a there's positive selection on lapsation as well. Creates this golden portfolio of healthier clients in the system, and claims are lower. So it's very good for the insurance company. Turns out it's good for society as well. People are healthier. They're not using the healthcare system. They're less of a burden on the healthcare system. Healthier people are more productive. They've got better positive attitude to life, etc. So it creates this virtuous cycle. Now, for us as an insurance company, we're receiving a premium for that, right? So we're receiving a monthly premium from that individual. And because we're saving money, because a person is leading a healthier life, we can give some of that back in rewards. So we even enhance the rewards. We take out of our risk savings, as opposed to giving it back to shareholders, we give it back to clients to do it even more, exercise even more, be even more healthier, etc., etc. And it creates this virtuous cycle that it's good for everyone. In our view, there are no losers. It's good for the client. They're leading a healthier life. It's good for the insurance company. Their claims ratios are better. Their portfolio of business is better. And it's good for society. And that's what we call shared value insurance. Everyone is sharing in the value created by a person leading a healthier life. And the money is coming from a person's normal premium, because they'd pay that amount of dollars to another insurance company. They pay to us the same kind of amount. But with us, because everyone, the portfolio business is following this healthy practice, there's extra money in the system. So we can enhance the rewards even more. So that for us is the system called shared value insurance. And that's why it works so exceptionally well. For us, in our view, there are no losers.
That's a very helpful articulation. And when you talk about medical savings accounts, certainly in the US, I think we have something similar. We call it health savings accounts, which are more the high deductible plans. But having said that, even though we do have that here, I would say the system here, it's kind of the opposite. It's focused more on kind of treatment versus prevention. And I remember we actually so maybe a week or two ago, there's a Stanford, I think she was a surgeon or a specialist, came on the Bill Maher show on HBO, and she talked about the fact that she went to Stanford. She went to Stanford for what, I think 12 and a half years between her undergrad, her medical and her specialty. And she never learned that much about preventative care as well. It was primarily about just treating illnesses. And I think that just speaks to, kind of the status quo when it comes to healthcare. It's very reactive. It's not as proactive. Now that might be changing today with some of the capabilities around like wearables, and it's interesting because it sounds like you guys were really visionary. I'm curious to know, when you never had the technology to monitor the things like we have today, like Fitbits and some of those things, like what was that like monitoring some of those things back in, whether it was the early to mid 90s?
So it's a very interesting point. We launched our medical savings account in 1993 when we went live into the marketplace. We launched our products. And our wellness program, or our shared value program, Vitality, went live in 1997. So we had a few years just savings accounts, and then savings account plus the incentivized wellness program. Our whole thing is that it has to be verifiable. Your exercise has to be verifiable. You can't just self-report, because people just start. You're carrying actuarial risk here. You got to make sure that the person actually did do the exercise. Mm-hmm. So it's very important for us to make sure that the person did do the exercise, so we do get that information. It's become a lot easier today, as you said, with wearables. We're getting the information all the time. But in those days, what we did was we made a deal with our biggest gym chain in South Africa. Mm-hmm. It was called Health and Racket in those days. It's now Virgin Active. And every time a person went into a health and record. They swiped, and we got that information. The person went in, and how long they had to swipe when they're going in and going out. So they couldn't just go there and sit and have a juice or whatever, a cup of coffee. They had to go there and exercise. So we made sure there was a minimum time. Sure, if a person wanted to cheat and just go for a cup of coffee and sit there for half an hour, it's quite difficult. But then they had to swipe on the way out, and we knew how long they were in the gym. So we got that information. So it was a verifiable transaction for us. The annual screenings were always verifiable because in the main, we actually managed that. So we went to the corporates with nurses and that type of thing to do your annual screens, and we captured that information: blood pressure, height and weight. We did some basic blood tests like cholesterol screenings, etc. So we just did the basics for a screening service, which is pretty good because people weren't having that. But we managed that in the main, so we got that information. Where we outsourced it, we made sure that we actually got that verifiable information. And then with diet, we had a relationship with a large wholesale, a large supermarket here in South Africa, and they gave us the actual information when a person bought healthy food. So we went through their full list of every single item in their store, and we determined which is healthy and which is not. Okay. And we got the information on when they were buying healthy food, and we incentivized them to buy healthy food. On the understanding that if you're buying healthy food, typically you're going to eat it. You're not going to just buy it and let it go to waste. Yeah. So we made sure that in the basket of goods, people are actually getting healthy goods, healthy food. So non-smoking is pretty easy. You could do a cotinine test, which we did, to determine on smoking, which is a very, very important aspect for healthy living. So we made sure we got verifiable information to make the program robust.
Yeah, that sounds like it was very robust. You had some reliable partners, and it was a very thoughtful, methodical approach. So if I were to think of how your approach improved on previous approaches to insurance, it sounds like not just with the healthy lifestyle, with incentivizing a more healthy lifestyle to reduce the risk of any incidents which should lead to claims, but also putting some of the control, I guess, or the incentives into the hands of the insureds, which I guess ultimately would be a benefit to the insurance company. So anything else that I'm missing there in terms of the benefits, and of course the broader benefit to society of having a kind of a healthier, population.
Look, I mean, if you look at it from a higher level, risk has really changed from infectious diseases. Our parents' age, our grandparents suffered from more infectious diseases. Today, we suffer from diseases of lifestyle. So risk has really become behavioral. Our behavior impacts our risk. And I think typical life insurance companies, health insurance companies, property and casualty haven't cottoned onto this idea. Risk is behavioral. If you want to manage the risk, try and incentivize better behavior. That is a fundamental change, a shift, a mind shift, that insurance companies are not just about understanding the risk and pricing the risk. It's about helping change that person's behavior, incentivizing them to lead better behavior, which is good for them and good for the insurance company. Once you have that mind shift, oh, well, listen, risk is behavioral, the entire business changes. Because now you have to put a program in place. You have to monitor the individual. They have to not monitor. They have to be willing to provide you information of how any risk that they're undertaking. Now, if you look at any financial services product, it's all behavioral, right? Certainly for life insurance, most risk is behavioral because, as I said, it's diseases of lifestyle. For health insurance, it's similar. It's all behavioral risk. And if you can help that person lead a healthier life, they improve their behavior. But for motor insurance, it's equally about behavior. Typically, insurance companies underwrite the motor vehicle about when you've last had a claim, your claims history, how old you are, where you park your motor vehicle at night, which roads you drive on, your distance of driving. That's typically how you underwrite motor insurance, and it's a sort of a once-off view. of that individual. Our view is completely different. Our view is, how does the person actually drive the motor vehicle? You can be a person, just get your license and drive it perfectly well. Why should you pay an extra premium because you're inexperienced driver, or perceived to be inexperienced because you just got your license? You could be a very, very good driver. So what we do is we monitor a person's driving behavior. And once you do that, once you get involved in understanding the person's behavior and trying to incentivize improvement of it, it changes your relationship with your client. You're about involvement in your client, encouraging him to lead a healthier life, encouraging him to drive better. Even for banking, it works for banking, because a lot of bad debts is also behavioral. If you can change a person's behavior, that they save, that they have insurance, that they don't have debt, short-term and long-term, or manage their short-term and long-term debt, that they save for retirement, that indicates to us as a company that your behavior is right for managing your finances. Even for retirement funding, it's all behavioral. When do you invest? At what age? Do you withdraw before retirement? When you're in retirement, how much do you withdraw? That's all behavioral aspects. So if you could do that, if you can manage that, not manage it, but encourage a person to lead a better life, a healthier life, drive better, save, be more prudent about their money, it impacts on risk. And that, for me, is the change in financial services. And that's where we've made a difference. And that idea has kind of matured over time, but it's this realization that risk is behavioral.
I'm glad that you also mentioned property and casualty as well, because certainly, and the motor example, telematics in the US certainly there's been an uptick in the focus on telematics, and like you said, capturing driver behavior and being able to price on that. So that's certainly something that's becoming a lot more mainstream now, and couldn't agree with you more that I think that's a more intelligent approach towards, and also on the homeowner side, IoT devices, which are capturing conditions of the home, which may indicate in advance the likelihood of a claim as well. So we're definitely seeing a shift, certainly on this side as well, with regards to those lines of business. Now, you talked about that from what I'm getting from the conversation, that whole mindset of that behavior. I was going to ask you, that I was going to mention that Discovery Limited helped to shape the South African insurance and financial services landscape, and ask you what the company's most consequential contributions were. And I think you started to answer the question. You talked about that shift to adapting that behavioral mindset and that more of a proactive mindset versus reactive. Anything else that you can think of in terms of your contributions in terms of the company helping to shape the insurance and financial services landscape?
Yeah, because once you start incentivizing better behavior, it becomes kind of, viral in a way. For example, here in South Africa, because we've got quite a big market share today, a lot of people are on our wellness program. So often you hear people exercising for their vitality points, and I'll take the stairs instead of the elevator or escalator, whatever. It's become part of who we are in South Africa. And, the exercise, it is a country where the sun shines quite a bit. So people are a lot of the people are outdoors and exercising in any case, but it's become part of that, become part of the culture, and, driving better and etc. People, I think, are more aware and, understand their own behavior and how to improve it. And we work with the largest organizations around the world. Once we had developed this program in South Africa and it was such a success, we took the idea to other markets, and we've worked with the best and the largest insurance companies around the world on how to think about their organization and change it from this very transactional insurance basis to more a focus on the consumer and trying to impact their consumer. And as I said, once you make that mind shift, it changes everything in your organization, changes your vision of our company, your purpose. Our purpose is about making people healthier, right? So our focus is purely on the consumer. So we're trying to influence these organizations to also just focus on the consumer, let them lead a, trying to get them to lead a healthier life. So, and all the aspects around the program we've learned over, tens of years now, we're going to other insurance markets and implementing it with companies in other markets with great success. We've done it in the UK under our own license, but we've now in other markets worked with insurance companies and, the best of the best, and worked with them and utilizing our experience, our know-how that we've learned, our data that we've got, and our, just how to actually do this. Because once you go along this path, you got to be all in as an organization. Your distribution's got to be different. Your training of your agents and your brokers has got to be different. Your way you manage everything, your claims, everything, your marketing has got to change, because now you're focused on not about just protection, but about behavior change. It's a very positive message. Leading a healthier life, driving better. These things are very, very positive messages. And what we've done over the years is worked with, as I said, the very best insurance companies to try and get them to think along these lines. And, a lot of companies, our partners that we work with have really taken this on board and sort of run it on their own. They now, running it and doing an exceptional job in their markets, following the same kind of philosophy.
That's great to hear. Now, when we think of companies, you and Adrian co-founded this company. I'm curious to know, based on and I know you've had different roles in the company across the broad umbrella of the company itself. From an individual perspective, I know each leader adds something very specific and very unique. So how have you individually helped to contribute to the success of the company as an entrepreneur and executive? Like, what individually would you say you brought to the table?
Yeah, look, I really do enjoy what our purpose as an organization. I believe in my own life about leading a healthier life. And, so I really enjoy, and our vision, I aspire to it, and I align my own personal life with what we're trying to do as an organization. That's the first thing. So, it really does align with what I am as an individual. But also, I've enjoyed every aspect of it. My role is more, I've always enjoyed the sort of starting phase of the businesses. So seeking out those opportunities, using our model, our business model that we've developed, and using it and finding new opportunities with it. I've really enjoyed that part of it. I've also been involved in running businesses for a while, but my main focus has always been sort of moving from an entrepreneur to an intrapreneur, right? Which is being entrepreneurial within the organization. I think it's something that's kind of underrated, because once you've built an organization, the assets that you've got are just enormous. First of all, you actually got assets. You got a great balance sheet. The people you work with are amazing. I mean, I work with the most special, amazing people who believe in the business model, believe in the organization and the purpose, have got years and years of experience. To work with them to do this and to build it elsewhere has just been an absolute privilege. And then you've got companies that are approaching us all the time with opportunities. So it's to use the assets that you've built and developed and the thinking that we've done, and to try and leverage it in a way and create and build on those success stories. Our view has always been, once you get to certain success, use that as the leverage point for the next opportunity. I think if one had to look at our organization, one can always accuse us, listen, you haven't been as focused as you should have been over the years. We have had to focus more and more over the years because we've been opportunity led to a certain extent. But in our view is, once you've got to a success, is, well, can I use this base, something that we've built, for something else? So for example, when we started out, we were only a health insurer. Then we said, listen, we've got all this information about the individual. They're leading a healthier life. What's the next product that we can offer them that makes sense to that individual, given that we're encouraging a healthier life? That was to get into life insurance. And then once this model is working for health and life insurance, sure, it can work for motor insurance, for property and casualty. So we went along that route. And then once it's working in all three of those, can it work in banking, in transactional banking? So we've developed now a bank. Once it's working in this market, can it work in other markets? So we haven't been a merger and acquisition type. We've never built our business by mergers and acquisitions. We are organic driven business, marketing our products, convincing our clients that this is the right product, enjoying our interaction with our clients, making sure that once they're on the product, they enjoy utilizing it. And so for us, it's about taking this IP that we've developed with such care, and we've seen it work so well in this market, and utilizing it elsewhere and growing those opportunities. And my personal challenge has always been as growing as fast as the organization. I know some, well-known entrepreneurs, they can scale their business exceptionally well, and they're able to scale. But for me, that was my biggest challenge, was the ability to grow as fast as the company was growing, and to be able to continue to be sort of an entrepreneur within the organization as the company scales. Because just think about it. When you're small, to do a new thing it's very exciting and creates value kind of immediately. But when you're large and you've got several things and they're all successful, the next best thing has got to make a difference. So the sort of level of success for their next idea has got to be far greater, if you understand what I'm saying to you. Whereas when you're starting out, the level of success, the next best thing has got to be, just marginal to make a difference. So now the heat is on. Well, listen, if you've done this successfully, how do we grow the businesses? And I think that's been the challenge, is to grow as fast as the company has grown. For me personally, that's been my challenge.
No. So you mentioned scalability as a challenge in terms of, like you said, some of those challenges with growth. Would you say so entrepreneurship, of course, as we know, is not a straight and narrow path, and you mentioned that issue or the challenge of scalability. Did you have any other notable challenges, anything around market adoption, getting funding, anything else that entrepreneurs, challenges that they would typically have, or any other that we haven't mentioned?
So listen, we were pretty successful quite early on in our organization. So our issue has been, I would say there've been 2 or 3 areas where I think, we've had challenges. One is being focused, because as I said, we were opportunity led at one stage. We were doing too many things. And I think we've tightened up that over the last, 4 or 5 years. I've actually got to credit Adrian for that. He's really got us more focused as an organization over the last 4 or 5 years. The one area we had difficulty was actually in the US market. Very, very difficult for us to have entered the US market. In 2000, we entered the US market sort of 8 years after our establishment here in South Africa. These 2 young entrepreneurs thought we could take on the health insurance market in the US, the toughest market there is. And we established ourselves in Chicago and Illinois. And, for the first 3 or 4 years, we were operating there under the brand name Destiny Health. We're doing quite well. The largest player in there, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, we were very small, not on their radar, but they wanted to get market share. So they dropped prices at one stage, and we couldn't just handle it anymore. The price in the marketplace was just too low. And our positive risk selection through the Vitality program didn't, unfortunately, deal with that differentiation. We couldn't get our prices to that level. So we had to exit the marketplace. That was a very difficult time for us, exiting the health insurance marketplace in the US. Although we did pivot to create just running the wellness program in the US, which we still do today. So that was, I would say, our biggest difficulty and lesson for us. Our biggest challenge was entering the US market. We now today in 42 markets around the globe. We're still in the US successfully. We work with life insurance companies like John Hancock and Manulife in Canada, for example, with health insurance companies today in that market. And other successful markets for us are the UK and China. But certainly our lessons that we learned in the US, I think, whilst difficult during that period, has really put us in stead on how to grow elsewhere into other markets.
Yeah, and when I think of what you said with the US, I remember the first company I worked for, one of the things I learned is when you think of business, sometimes people think that like when you talk about a global expansion, people think of just like planting flags. And I remember the analogy with the CEO at the first company I worked at. He said that we're not just planting flags in countries. We look at everything strategically and where it makes sense. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily a failure if it didn't work out at first. To your point, I mean, you've had success in other areas and you're still operating there, just maybe in a slightly different capacity.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct.
Now, as you reflect on your career, you've been an entrepreneur for a very long time. Let's say a couple of things like, you know, what are some things that you think it takes to be a successful entrepreneur? And, you know, do you have any regrets? Any things you would have done differently, knowing what you know now?
Now, listen, I've had a fantastic time with it. I really enjoyed it. As I said, the sort of special things for me, the people I work with have been phenomenal. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, a lot of the people that I'm associated with and work with on a daily basis, I've been working with them for, you know, decades. And we get on well and we run the business, I think, for the benefit of the organization and for the stakeholders and all that kind of thing. But I really enjoy the people I work with. I enjoy what we do as an organization, you know, making a difference and that type of thing. So it's been an absolute, you know, pleasure for me. I've always had this attitude, a positive attitude. I know, you know, business has its challenges and all that kind of thing. I've loved that opportunity. I've loved that sort of that risk taking and getting it right. For me, that part of the business, the first 4 or 5 years, and all businesses go through a tough time. And I don't know, maybe there are a few entrepreneurs that started and had immediate success. I don't know. Yeah, I've never had an overnight success. It's been a lot of hard work, and I've loved that process. Trying to work that out for me is the most enjoyable part of business. Trying to get that key. And once you establish a company, it always goes through a tough time. You know, you can't get sales, the pricing is wrong, the marketing doesn't meet the marketplace, the whatever, etc. You go through a tough time after you start. The launch is great and everyone's excited after the launch, and you go through a time where you need to adapt and change things. You know, for me, that process, that part of it, not the ideation. I love the ideation, but that's, for me, that process, once you've launched, to get it to scale and to get it to success is the most exciting time in a business's existence. And people need to enjoy it and embrace. I know that part is extremely tough. You know, things aren't working. Why are they not working? Is your pricing right? Have you got this? Trying different things. And it's those people who try, get the feedback from the marketplace and take that marketplace feedback damn seriously. I find a lot of entrepreneurs, they launch a product into the marketplace and there's a kind of arrogance. Listen, I know what the product should be, in the clients, whatever their feedback, well, they need to adapt. I don't need to adapt. But listen, you got to take the feedback exceptionally, clearly and quickly and seriously. You know, whether it's from your distributors or from your clients, take that feedback and change your product and adapt. Because the essence of the idea is great. People love the idea, but you might just be missing the market slightly. And for me, that process was the most enjoyable time in a business. And I love that. And also, as I said to you, Dominic, once you've built the business and things are successful, etc., what I also enjoy is how to leverage it, utilizing the assets that you built, and to say, what can we do next to this? What can we grow now? Where are the opportunities given what we got? And there's always something missing. You know what I'm saying? There's always an opportunity internally. Things aren't working exactly right here. Is how to hone this business better and better all the time. And that process I also enjoy. So it's all about, for me, is that idea of continuous improvement and trying to get it right for the marketplace. And sometimes you realize when you've taken it far, listen, I've tried everything, it's just not going to work. Then you got to act quickly to shut it down, because this thing just simply, whatever you try, you know, there's just no marketplace for this, there's no future in it. And then we've gone down that route as well. When you're doing a lot of entrepreneurial stuff, that phase is enjoyable and trying to get it right. But sometimes you realize no matter what you do, it ain't happening. Then you got to act quickly and cut your losses as quickly as possible. That part of it, you know, it's hard. All these things are hard, but it's actually, that's the for me, that part of the journey I find very exciting and enjoyable.
Barry, that's a really important reminder, because in an outcome-oriented society where people want instant gratification, it's important to remember having the love for the process and the iteration and figuring things out. I think that's often lost on people in today's world when we live in this instant gratification society. I think that's a really important reminder.
Yeah, listen, for entrepreneurs, there's no instant gratification. It's years and years of hard work. You realize if you want to go the entrepreneurial route, you're it's not a 9 to 5 job. You're not on a 9 to 5 job, and you can forget about it when you get home. It's continuous, but that's you got to enjoy it. You got to say, listen, I love that part of the business. It's not for me. It's not like business is different to my life. I really enjoy it, and I get a thrill out of it, and working with the people. That's where it comes from, and yeah, for me, it is about the process.
Okay, and in closing, just want to ask, there's a tie back to the actuarial community. A lot of actuaries and risk professionals be watching. What areas you talked earlier in the episode about some of the areas where actuaries in South Africa have gone into. So what areas do you foresee actuaries, getting involved with going forward, like having your understanding of the economic environment today?
So listen, first of all, we employ a lot of actuaries within Discovery. And they work in different areas, obviously life insurance and health insurance, property and casualty, banking. We got some actuaries in banking. They're doing exceptionally well. So I think actuaries are moving into different areas within financial services, not just the traditional life, pension funds, etc., etc. So different lines of business. Secondly, they're moving out of the traditional roles into product development, into marketing. We call it technical marketing. So it's marketing with some sort of mathematical bent or some insight. The best people to do that are actuaries. Listen, this is working because this and this reason. These are the solutions for you. So actuaries getting involved in marketing and sales, it's done wonders for us. That that you get the smart people out in front of the clients. People, both they understand actuarial science and they deal well with people. So they're very good in the sales environment. Certainly backing up a sales force. They're getting involved in data science. A lot of people get involved in that. Maybe not the real technical work, because you need deep data science expertise, but the application of it for actuarial science, for the insurance company, etc. Also managing insurance companies. I find the best people to manage an insurance company are people who come from that sort of technical background. Certainly those with the ability to deal with people and be outgoing, etc. Those actuaries are excellent in general management in insurance companies and financial services. And yeah, in South Africa, also investment management. We've had actuaries going to investment management. So I think, it's kind of seen more broadly in South Africa. Actuaries play a far broader role here and have been very, very successful. I think your sort of brighter kids at school have tended to go into sort of actuarial science, more and more over time. But they are finding places for themselves, not only in the traditional roles. And I think in the aligned roles, and I think they've done well, and they can, they got great capabilities. They understand how to manage the risk and the finances and the long-term nature of it. And I think those kinds of skills are so vital for sort of anything. We've got actuaries here getting involved in energy trading, because you've got to manage supply and demand and put those things together. Not so easy to do that over the long term. How do you do that? How do you manage it? Making sure that there's electricity available for that demand on an ongoing basis. You need that kind of mindset. And I think actuaries bring that to the table. So I think actuaries can play a role across financial services, a lot of different types of risk, etc. And that's what's really been exciting here in South Africa, that, actuarial science has sort of been quite a broad career.
Yeah, that's an important reminder that actuaries can do a lot more than simply, what we've historically done in the insurance marketplace, especially in places outside of South Africa. Now, in closing, Barry, if you were to leave aspiring entrepreneurs with one tip, so one tip for the next generation of aspiring entrepreneurs, what would it be?
No, the one thing for me is to take a little bit more, put yourself out there. You know, if you're feeling, listen, you know, for us, we were 26 and 27 when we started Discovery. We were young, but we felt go for it. Put yourself out. It doesn't mean you have to take inordinate amount of risk. You know, you're not putting your money on black or red on a casino. It's calculated risk. It's a risk that you can understand as an actuary. So for me, it's about going for it, about doing it, because the worst thing is regret, that you never went out and did something on your own, or you never took a chance. Even internally, if you're working for a large organization, you do something internally, take that risk, add that value, because people got so much value to add, but you got to be willing to go for it. And willing, you know, oftentimes I've been told, listen, that's a rubbish idea, it'll never work. You got to be able to take that, take the no, take the rejection, etc. You know, if you want to put yourself out there, you know, so what? You take a bit of the rejection, but if you do it many times, ultimately something will happen for you. So for me, it's about, you know, just pushing the envelope a little bit more. Don't just sit back in your comfort zone, etc., etc. Because life, for me, I mean, those people also add value, but for me, if you really want to elevate your career, etc., you just got to, you know, put yourself out there. And for me, that's the advice I'd give actuaries: is given the skill sets you got, given their capabilities, take advantage of it.
And, you know, certainly that point resonates on that, the pain of regret, and nothing worse than having the regret. And I think it's a great time for people to take risk, whether you're an actuary or not, you know, and to become an entrepreneur. As you said, it's a very challenging journey, but if you like to solve problems and, you know, you're committed to the process and not just the outcome, then I think there's a lot you can accomplish. So just
for me, it's been so rewarding. That's the main thing. It's been a lot of reward.
yes, I can see. And you know, Barry, just wanted to thank you so much for your time. I know it's very precious, and you know, the goal was really to not just to speak about your career, but hopefully to inspire that next generation of actuaries, risk professionals who may want to pursue entrepreneurship. So I'm very much looking forward to sharing this with the community. And again, just it's been a pleasure to meet you and collaborate with you on this. And I hope that we do keep in touch. And like I said, looking forward to sharing this with the community.
Dominic, it's been great. Thanks for the opportunity and for inviting me onto your podcast.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, Barry. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.